Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time when Mondays weren't just annoying, they were a full-body curse. The year is 1383. You're wrapped in a half-musty wool blanket stuffed with straw, sleeping shoulder to shoulder with 3 other people in a one-room cottage. There's a chicken roosting unbothered in the corner. The hearth embers have long gone out. And now, just as you're dreaming about a hot meat pie, you feel a cold drip of condensation plop right onto your forehead. Welcome to Monday morning in a medieval village. You open your eyes slowly. Everything is dark except for a faint blue-gray light leaking in through a crooked wooden shutter. The air smells like old smoke and damp sheep. Your neck aches, your back creaks, and for a moment you just lie there, hoping someone else will be the first to get up. Spoiler, no one moves. Not your cousin, not your grandmother, not even the snoring piglet that somehow made it into your shared bedroll again. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm just one person making these sleepy history stories. Also, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up slowly. Your wool shirt clings to your skin, slightly damp from the cold air, and possibly last night's ale. The floor is hard-packed dirt, uneven and riddled with the sharp little bones of past dinners no one bothered to sweep. Your feet find your shoes, carved wood clogs, cold as river stones. You wince a little. It's Monday, after all. You fumble your way to the hearth and poke the coals, hoping to coax a tiny flame out of yesterday's ash. Nothing. It takes 3 tries and a bit of that dry moss you keep in a clay pot for exactly this reason. Finally, just a flicker. Enough to make tea, not even close, but maybe enough to see your own breath in the gloom. Outside, a rooster crows, not a proud cinematic crow. This one sounds confused, like it also hates Mondays, probably because someone's cat chased it up a roof beam again. Eventually, the rest of the household starts to stir. Your brother mutters something about his knees. Your aunt is already complaining that no one helped her gather wood yesterday. A pot clatters, a goat screams, and you're not sure if that's the baby crying or the wind whistling through the roof slats again. It's easy to romanticize village life. Cobblestone lanes, fresh bread, singing as you churn butter. But the truth is, mornings were hard, especially at the beginning of the work week. Historians still argue whether the term Monday actually existed in common village speech, or if people simply called it the first Labor Day after Mass. Either way, the sentiment was the same: dread, fatigue, and a strong desire to go back to bed. You step outside, greeted by a bracing slap of air. It's muddy already, of course it is. The village path is more puddle than road, and somewhere in the distance, you hear someone yelling about a missing pig. Back inside, breakfast is, well, it's bread if you're lucky. If not, it's yesterday's porridge scraped into a new bowl to feel special. Sometimes, if there was a feast on Sunday, you might get ale to soften the sting, but more on that later. For now, you stretch your back, glance at the dull sky, and sigh. Another Monday. You've got wool to card, chickens to chase, a fence that fell down again, and you're pretty sure the thatcher hasn't shown up. Again. The days are long. The food is simple. The air smells faintly of smoke and livestock. But hey, at least the cows aren't giving you the side-eye yet. And as you take those first few reluctant steps down the muddy lane, cloak pulled tight against the wind, you realize something. You're still tired, you're still cold, and there are 6 more days of this ahead. It's Monday, which means one thing above all else. The chores no one did yesterday are now your problem. You know how Sundays are, lazy, indulgent, deceptively peaceful. Everyone's still groggy from the weekly mass, half full of barley stew, and no one wants to lift a finger. Which is all very spiritual and restful until Monday rolls in like a cart with a broken wheel, and every skipped task from the day before lands squarely on your aching shoulders. You step outside with your arms full of matted wool, dirty, damp, and faintly suspicious smelling. It's time for the weekly scour. That means scrubbing it in cold stream water with homemade soap made from lye, sheep fat, and regret. And it means doing it while hunched over a bucket, because bending at the waist for hours is just how medieval backs earned their creak. The moment your fingers hit the water, your whole body shudders. It's as if your soul tried to escape out through your knuckles. You grit your teeth and press on, because if you don't clean the wool, no one else will. And if it's not cleaned, it won't be spun. And if it's not spun, it won't be sold. And if it's not sold, well, good luck paying rent to the manor this month. Your cousin passes by carrying a ladder and gives you the kind of smile that says, "Better you than me." He's off to fix the thatch roof of the alewife's cottage, which sounds noble until you remember he's mostly there to flirt and maybe steal a meat pie. Meanwhile, you've got your own flirtation happening, with an angry goose who thinks the laundry bucket is hers now. It's not just wool today. The fence out back collapsed during last week's storm, and a neighbor's goat has decided your cabbage patch is now his summer home. You shoo it gently, only to watch it leap sideways and knock over the water trough. You sigh. It's too early for screaming, and besides, your throat's already sore from Sunday's singing. Historians still argue whether Monday was officially recognized as the hardest work day or if that's just something we've projected backward from modern experience. But it's clear that, in most villages, the first day after church involved communal cleanup, catching up, and a fair amount of passive-aggressive muttering. You head to the compost pile with a bundle of unusable scraps, moldy barley, broken eggshells, and one unfortunate turnip that's gone entirely hollow. It smells active. You try not to breathe too deeply as you toss it onto the heap and stir it with a stick. At least compost doesn't judge you. By midday, your hands are raw, your back is wet from a brief and uninvited drizzle, and someone's child has asked you 6 times why dirt is brown. You don't answer, partly because you're not sure, mostly because you're focused on untangling a mess of flax fibers that were definitely supposed to be dry by now. You remember Sundays from your childhood, slightly warmer, less rushed, with honey if you were lucky. And now, as an adult, you understand the true cost of that day of rest. Monday is the bill. You trudge to the communal well for water. The bucket rope is fraying again, and you make a mental note to mention it at the next town moot, right after you forget to go to the moot. The well water is clear, freezing, and just a little metallic. You wash your face with a handful and immediately regret it. Nothing like a splash of ice to the face to make you miss staying in bed. As you make your way back home, a neighbor calls out about needing help mending her gate. You nod politely, say, maybe after supper, and immediately know you won't. There's something almost cosmic about the way Monday collects every minor inconvenience and dumps it at your doorstep. A cracked pot, a missing boot, a rooster that suddenly thinks it's nocturnal. You swear it wasn't like this last Thursday. By the time you sit for a moment, just one moment, you notice something. The sky is a little darker, the wind has picked up, and the chores are only halfway done. And still, the goat's in the cabbage. There's a strange tradition that crops up in many medieval villages after Sunday feasts. The consumption of whatever ale is left over, no matter what shape it's in. And you, unlucky soul that you are, have drawn the short straw this Monday morning. You're standing in the corner of a smoky common room, holding a wooden mug that smells like it's been used to clean boots. The ale inside is flat, cloudy, and somehow both bitter and sour. But you sip anyway, because it's calories, and warmth, and, allegedly, courage. You grimace. Somewhere between Sunday night and now, this brew has turned into something resembling grain soup left out in the sun. Historians still argue whether this post-feast morning ale was an actual tradition or just the result of people being too thrifty or too hungover to waste anything mildly liquid. You're not alone. Everyone in the room is pretending to enjoy it. The baker, still dusted in flour, raises his cup and forces a through his teeth. The old miller is already snoring into his bowl, and the reeve, who, let's be honest, hasn't done a day of real work in months, is making a show of toasting everyone like he's royalty. The floor is sticky, the air smells like boiled turnips, wet boots, and smoke-dried ham, and someone's playing a cracked lute with exactly 3 working strings. Somehow, it's still out of tune. You take another sip, mostly out of defiance, and stare out the low window. The street is still muddy from last week's rain, and a line of laundry flaps limply on a crooked rope. You can tell by the direction it's blowing that the afternoon will bring wind, just enough to blow the soot back into your house. The ale starts to settle, or maybe you just go numb to it. Either way, you're upright and moving again, which is more than can be said for your cousin, who's now lying sideways in the corner after declaring himself done with monarchy forever. Whatever that means. Back at home, you take what's left of the ale, just a splash, and pour it into a pot with onions and stale bread crusts. It's called ale porridge, but calling it food is an act of optimism. You stir it with a wooden spoon that wobbles at the handle. A rat scurries somewhere behind the hearth. You decide to ignore it. He's probably just trying to survive Monday too. Later, you spot the barrel itself, cracked at the seam, leaking into the dirt floor. You think about fixing it, but you'd need pitch, and pitch means a walk to the tanner's yard, which means navigating that smell, and honestly, you're not ready. Somewhere, a dog howls, then another. It's probably just the ale finally taking effect on someone else. You remember your aunt once telling you, never drink the Monday ale unless you want to see Thursday twice. You didn't know what it meant then. Now, sipping this sharp, sour liquid that tastes a little like despair, you think you understand. Still, it's tradition, or stubbornness, or survival. So you finish it, and immediately regret it. You drag a rough cloth across your face and wince as the morning chill bites back. It's time to wash up, which, in theory, sounds refreshing. In reality, it's an ordeal. There's no warm water, no soft soap, no cheery wash basin lit by sunshine and fresh flowers. Just a dented tin bucket, a chunk of something vaguely soap adjacent made from rendered fat and ashes, and a long walk to the stream if it's not frozen over. Today, you're lucky. Only a light frost. Your hands are already stiff by the time you reach the water, your wooden clogs clacking awkwardly along the packed path. The stream gurgles like it knows what's coming and pities you. You kneel, dip your cloth, and immediately regret every choice that's brought you here. The shock of the icy water is enough to make your bones rattle. You splash it on your arms, your face, your neck. The cloth turns brown almost immediately, and you try not to think about what's upstream. Washing your underarms is optimistic. You dab, more symbol than substance. Historians still debate how often medieval villagers actually bathed. While public bathhouses existed in larger towns, most rural folks made do with the occasional scrub, usually more out of social pressure than hygiene. You recall one tale of a lord who proudly bathed once every 3 months, whether he needed it or not. You lather the chunk of soap and it gives off a smell that can only be described as burnt goat and pine. You scrub at a patch of dried mud on your arm, only to realize it's probably from yesterday's compost duty. That would explain the smell. You glance around to see if anyone's watching. Not that they'd care. Everyone else smells like animal. Still, there's a certain pride in trying. You rinse, shake your hands dry in the air, and instantly regret it. The wind picks up, turning the remaining droplets on your skin into tiny ice knives. You rub your arms and begin to trudge back, past a row of huts with crooked chimneys puffing pale smoke. You notice your neighbor dumping a pot of dirty dishwater directly into the path again. She shrugs when she sees you. "It's Monday," she says, as if that justifies making the mud slipperier. Back inside your cottage, you find a corner near the hearth that's just warm enough to thaw your fingertips. The fire is crackling now, thanks to your brother finally remembering to chop kindling. You hover your hands above the flames and watch the steam rise off your sleeves. It's a quiet moment, rare, brief. You close your eyes and take in the sounds. The creak of timber, the bubbling pot of something that might become soup, the low hum of conversation from outside. Then a crash, followed by a bleating scream. You look out the door and see one of the neighbor's sheep galloping down the lane, trailing a line of laundry behind it like some woolly parade float. A child runs after it, laughing. The mother is not. You sigh. Your hands are still wet. You were clean for almost 5 whole minutes. You step outside again, hands still tingling from the chill, only to come face to snout with your first real test of the day, the livestock. Now, you'd think that after centuries of domestication, animals might show a little gratitude. They do not, especially not on Mondays. The pigs eye you like debt collectors. The chickens scatter in all directions with the exact coordination of a prank, and your favorite cow, Marjorie, old and moody, has planted herself right in front of the gate and is refusing to move. You clap your hands. Nothing. You murmur sweet nothings. Still nothing. Finally, you attempt the oldest trick in the book, pretending you have a turnip. Marjorie squints. She is not fooled. You try again with actual food. She huffs, chews dramatically, and moves exactly 3 inches. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers truly considered their animals as family in the way we sometimes think. There are records of naming, stories of attachments, but also fines for beating a misbehaving goat too enthusiastically. It's possible they were both beloved and infuriating, much like cousins. You try to herd the chickens into their little coop, using a broom with about 5 bristles left. It's less of a broom now, more of a strongly worded suggestion. The hens have no interest in cooperating. One flaps directly into your face and leaves you blinking in surprise, and the vague smell of feathers and corn. You mutter something that earns you a scolding look from an old woman carrying a sack of flour. And then there's the pigs. The pigs, for reasons known only to them, have decided that today is for escape. You spot a gap in the fence, again, and see 2 of them nosing their way into the herb garden like they own the place. You wave your arms, stomp, and slip in the mud so hard your dignity dislocates. Covered in dirt and pig hoof prints, you finally grab a bucket of scraps and start shaking it like you're summoning spirits. It works, barely. They trot back, oinking proudly, like they've done you a favor. By the time all the animals are vaguely where they belong, you've lost 1 chicken, gained 2 bruises, and developed a mysterious smear across your tunic that smells faintly of sour milk. You sit down on a tree stump, breathing hard. Marjorie the cow saunters over and licks your sleeve with deliberate indifference. The thing no one tells you about livestock is how much of your identity becomes tied up in their moods. If the sheep are grumpy, your day is ruined. If the cow's milk is thin, it must be something you did. If the goat's bleeding non-stop, it's probably your fault. Or at least, that's what your neighbor will say at the well tomorrow. There's a soft cluck behind you. You turn. It's the missing hen, perched smugly on your woodpile, watching you, judging. You stare at each other in silence, one sentient creature to another. Then she hops down and disappears behind the cottage. She'll come back when she's ready. Probably. Just when you think you've earned a break, you hear the heavy clop of hooves on stone and the distinct rattle of a bridle that only means one thing. Someone from the manor is coming. You try to hide your expression, but deep down, you know. It's Monday. Of course they're here. You wipe your hands on your tunic, which is already streaked with animal grime, porridge stains, and something that might be yesterday's stew. You straighten your back. Sort of. The steward dismounts slowly, looking like someone who's never shoveled anything in his life. His boots gleam, his cloak is too clean, and his voice, when he greets you, is laced with the kind of politeness that always means more work. Your week of labor begins today, he says. You nod. Not that you have a choice. See, under the manorial system, peasants like you owe work to the Lord in exchange for the tiny scrap of land you farm. Historians still debate whether these obligations were as crushing as they sound on parchment. Some argue peasants could negotiate. Others say it was more or less indentured labor with extra mud. Today, your task is mending a fence along the far field. The same fence that was mended last week, and the week before. You suspect it exists solely to give people something to fix. You follow the steward's pointed finger, which directs you toward a sagging wooden line half swallowed by brambles, and definitely occupied by at least 3 angry geese. You nod again. He leaves. You sigh. The walk there is long and muddy. Your wooden shoes squelch with each step. Somewhere behind you, someone coughs with enough intensity to shake a chimney. A child is crying in the distance. A dog barks. The soundtrack of Monday. When you reach the fence, it is, as expected, worse than it looked from afar. One post has snapped entirely. Another is buried in a ditch. And the geese? The geese are just waiting for you to get close so they can launch a coordinated ambush. You pull a few warped planks from the pile nearby and set to work, hammering with a rock. No nails, just hope and anger. Your hands throb, your back protests, and every few minutes a goose hisses from the underbrush to remind you of your station in life. As you're tying twine around a newly propped post, you spot something odd glinting in the grass. You stoop, pick it up, and find a rusted brooch, probably dropped by someone from the manor long ago. It's shaped like a leaf, bent at the edge, but still oddly beautiful. You tuck it in your pouch, a small treasure, just for you. Back at the village, more news trickles in. The Lord wants eggs, butter, and someone to repair the ditch near the grain shed. Mondays are like that, everyone remembering what they need and all of it falling on you. You stop by the manor kitchen to drop off your share of firewood and eggs. Inside, the warmth hits you like a dream. Roasting meat, soft bread. You breathe in too deep and cough from the spice. A servant eyes you as if you've overstayed your welcome by merely existing. You leave empty-handed, of course. The best meals stay upstairs. Outside, you lean against the outer wall for a second too long. Your knees lock. Your body protests. You wonder if you can fake an injury, but then remember the steward would probably make you 10 pigs instead. And so you walk. Back down the muddy lane. Past the gossiping washerwomen. Past the goats chewing someone's laundry. Past the crooked sign that claims, in badly carved Latin, "Blessed be the humble." You're not feeling particularly blessed, but you are, without a doubt, humble. It's midday now, and your stomach growls like a church bell, loud, deep, and slightly embarrassing. You decide to make your way toward the market, not because you have coin to spend, let's be honest, you barely have lint, but because sometimes just looking at food is enough to keep you vertical. The village market on a Monday is an experience, not the lively, colorful affair painted in fairy tales. It's more like a noisy mud pit with shouting, smells, and suspicious cheese. You step into the square and instantly regret it. First comes the fish stall. It smells like low tide on a hot day, and this fishmonger is waving a trout around like he's conducting a symphony. You edge away. Next is the vegetable cart. Root vegetables mostly. Half of them bruised. One suspiciously fuzzy. A toddler is licking a turnip while her mother haggles over leeks. Then there's the cheese. Oh, the cheese. Some of it is bright orange, some of it is green, on purpose, allegedly. And one round is oozing in a way that suggests sentience. You wonder briefly if it's responsible for the smell that's been following you since the fish stall. And somewhere nearby, someone's cooking something in a pot over open flame. It smells incredible. It's also not for you. It belongs to the baker's apprentice, who's standing guard with a stick. You consider challenging him, but remember he's taller than you and knows how to aim. Historians often romanticize medieval markets, centers of trade, community, culture. And yes, those things are true, but they also reeked. Imagine the worst parts of a petting zoo, a smokehouse, and an unventilated locker room. And now imagine buying cabbage there. Still, there's a certain rhythm to it, a sort of muddy poetry. Women shouting about eggs, men arguing over a thread count, children chasing dogs that probably don't belong to anyone. A donkey brays in protest at nothing in particular. You wander past a stall selling candles shaped like saints. The vendor catches your eye and lifts one. "Saint Jude," he says. "For hopeless causes." You pause. He grins. You keep walking. A cloth merchant beckons you over, showing off linen that's clearly just recycled sackcloth. You nod politely, pretend to feel the weave, and shuffle away before he can ask your name, or your wallets. Then you see her, the old woman with the spice table. She's always there, hunched, muttering, smiling with exactly 2 teeth. Her stall smells like everything good. Rosemary, thyme, dried oranges, a hint of cinnamon. You inhale deeply and feel almost human again. You pick up a tiny pouch of something marked for sleep. She nods slowly, like she knows. You don't ask the price, you don't have the coin, but she tucks it into your hand anyway. "Later," she says, "bring me something shiny." You nod. You remember the brooch from the field. You walk away feeling oddly rich. Back toward home, you pass the baker's stall. There's no bread left, just crumbs and a single burnt roll no one wants. He shrugs at you. "Busy morning," he says. You nod. "Must have been the moon," you reply. You don't know why you said that. You're hungry, muddy, and one toe is definitely bleeding. But you did get a spice pouch, possibly magical. So, in the grand scheme of Mondays, not the worst one yet. You make it back to your cottage just in time to hear the church bell ring out over the fields, an off-key clanging that somehow echoes through your skull. It's not that you don't appreciate spiritual reminders, but after a morning of livestock battles, questionable cheese, and mud in places you didn't know you had, the last thing you want is to be judged. And yet, judged you shall be. The chapel isn't far, a short walk uphill lined with crooked stones and slippery moss that's claimed more than one ankle over the years. You shuffle along with the others, shoulders hunched, not entirely sure whether the bell is calling you to prayer, penance, or just another round of passive-aggressive glances from Brother Eustace. You reach the doors and step inside. The scent hits first, a mix of old incense, damp wood, beeswax, and regret. The air is cooler here, thicker. You shuffle toward the back pews, avoiding eye contact with the front row regulars. Brother Eustace is already pacing slowly near the altar, wearing a robe so stiff with starch it practically creaks. He spots your muddy shoes. Of course he does. Historians still argue whether medieval villagers felt genuinely spiritual attachment to daily chapel rituals or simply feared the consequences of skipping them. Either way, you're here, present, mostly upright. The sermon begins. You try to focus, you really do. But your mind drifts, first to the patch of hay in your bed that pokes your back, then to the spice pouch in your pocket, then to whether that chicken ever came back. Brother Eustace drones on about sin and humility, and you swear he looks right at you when he says sloth. The woman next to you smells faintly of fish. She's snoring softly. You envy her. You look up at the stained glass window depicting St. Agatha holding a loaf of bread and a tiny rake. You don't know why she has a rake. Maybe she hated Mondays too. Eventually, you're released, sort of. Because outside the chapel, the real ritual begins, the judgment gauntlet. As you file out, the townsfolk cluster like gossiping hens. Eyes scan tunics, hair, posture. Sister Beatrice whispers something to the baker's wife. The baker's wife turns and stares directly at you. You smile. She does not. Someone mutters about the quality of your boots. Someone else compliments the spice woman's shawl. You stand very still, hoping to blend in with the fog. It never works. A group of young acolytes pass by, laughing too loudly. You recognize one of them as the mayor's son. He has clean nails. You hate him a little. You decide to walk around the long way home, through the orchard, where the trees are bare and the mossy ground muffles your footsteps. It's quiet here, peaceful, and the only judgment comes from a squirrel who looks like he knows your secrets. You stop by a fallen log and sit for a moment. The bell still echoes faintly behind you. A wood pigeon flutters nearby. The trees creak like old bones. You let yourself exhale. You know Brother Eustace means well. Probably. But there's something about being stared at like a wayward lamb that doesn't quite soothe the soul. Still, you showed up. You knelt. You nodded. You survived. And now it's time to face the rest of Monday. You stand, stretch, and brush the dirt from your cloak. Then head back down the slope, where the real penance waits, in the form of an empty stew pot and a floor that still hasn't swept itself. Your feet ache by the time you reach the cottage. Less from distance, more from endurance. Wooden shoes are not known for their orthotic support, and walking on stones all day is like giving your soles a gentle beating with every step. You sit on the edge of the threshold and wrestle them off. One is stuck. You yank. It resists. You win. Barely. Inside, the hearth crackles, a welcome sight. The fire's heat curls towards you like a dog eager to comfort. You wiggle your toes near it, watching steam rise from damp wool. Then you glance down at your foot. Blister. Fantastic. You touch it gently, then immediately regret it. It pulses like it has its own heartbeat. You grab a rag, cleanish, and wrap it around your heel. There's a small jar of something vaguely oily in the corner. You don't know what it is, but your aunt swears by it. So you smear it on. It smells like onions and bees. You hope that's good. Outside, a cart rolls past, splashing mud onto the side of your house. You sigh, then laugh, because, of course. Later, you need to fetch water again. You make your way to the communal well, this time slower, more deliberate. Every rock in the path seems personally offended by your existence. You tread carefully. At the well, there's a queue. Of course there is. Everyone with a bucket, a jug, a barrel on wheels. You nod at the cooper's wife. She nods back. The silence says everything. Yes, it's still Monday. You wait your turn. The bucket is heavy, the rope rough and splintered. You wince as a shard lodges into your palm. You pull it out with your teeth. Like a champion, a tired, mildly bleeding champion. As you head back home, a child races past and nearly knocks you into the ditch. You regain balance with heroic flailing. The water sloshes but doesn't spill. Small victories. At the cottage, the floorboards creak underfoot. You finally sit, not to work, not to listen, just to sit. You lean back and feel every joint report in like disgruntled messengers. Elbow, knee, lower back, surprise neck pain. You remember being a child, thinking adults were magical because they got to choose when to nap. You now realize the truth. They didn't choose. They just collapsed. You glance over at the wash pile, then at your feet, then back to the wash pile. Nope, not today. You rest your head against the wall, close your eyes, and listen to the village, the flap of a banner in the wind, a sheep's low call, someone shouting about a missing pie, the far-off toll of a cracked bell. Historians still argue whether commoners had time for rest in their daily routines, or if the pace of survival simply demanded constant motion. But here, right now, you've carved a rare moment for yourself. A pause, a breath, your toe twitches, your blister throbs, and somewhere outside the rooster crows again, late, confused, perfectly on brand for this ridiculous day. You smile, just a little, then whisper to no one in particular, almost over. You open your eyes to a sound you've come to dread. Rain, not the gentle kind that patters on the roof and lulls you back to sleep. No, this is Monday rain, angry, sideways, spiteful. You peer out the door and watch as fat drops splash into puddles already teeming with yesterday's regrets. The thatch above your window is leaking again. You can hear the slow drip, 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 into the clay basin someone cleverly placed there last week. It's almost full. You sigh. You step outside and the cold hits you like a slap. Your cloak, which was drying by the hearth, is still vaguely damp. You throw it around your shoulders anyway and head toward the grain shed, because apparently it's your turn to check the thatch there too. Your boots, relaced with fraying twine, sink deep into the mud. You wobble, slide, and perform a move that would impress even the most agile court jester. Only no one sees it, except a goose. Of course. By the time you reach the shed, your hem is soaked. The structure itself leans slightly to one side, like it's as tired as you. The door creaks open, revealing the unmistakable sight of a leak right over the sacks of rye. Perfect. You climb up to the low rafters, ducking spiderwebs and bat droppings, to patch it with a slab of moss and a prayer. The wind howls through the slats like it's laughing at you. One gust nearly knocks you off balance. You catch yourself on a beam, your arm brushing something sticky. You don't look, you just keep patching. Historians still debate how much weather shaped the medieval work week, but there's no doubt it shaped the mood. Rain could ruin a harvest, flood a road, collapse a roof, or, more often, just soak your socks and make everything heavier. Back on the ground, you shake off the worst of the wet and consider calling it good enough. You look up one more time. Water is now leaking slightly to the left of where you just patched. Naturally, you patch that too. On your way back, the mud has evolved. It's no longer just slippery, it's sucking at your feet like a hungry swamp. One of your shoes comes halfway off. You curse softly. A priest walks by under a canvas hood and nods in silent judgment. You nod back, soaked, shoeless, and fully defeated. You make it to the cottage just as the skies open again, not even pretending anymore, just a full deluge. You strip off your outer layers and hang them near the fire. The room smells like wet wool and pine ash, a cozy kind of awful. Then comes the roof drip. You forgot about the back corner. You place another bowl underneath and stare at it with tired reverence. It's the third bowl today. You make a mental note to steal some thatch scraps from the manor's pile. Not that you will, but you feel better pretending you might. You sit down, watching the storm turn the world outside into gray streaks. The wind whistles through every gap in the walls. A draft kisses the back of your neck, and you huddle deeper into your blanket. You sip something vaguely warm, water with herbs maybe, could be soup. could be leaf juice. And you think, Mondays were not made for comfort. But somehow you've made it this far. And even though you're soggy, sore, and partially shoeless, there's something kind of peaceful about the sound of the rain. So long as it stays outside, you'd think by now, mid-afternoon, post-blisters, post-rain, post-goose ambush, you might have earned a crumb of comfort, a crust of bread, a smile from the baker, something. Instead, you find yourself standing in a long, sluggish line at the baker's stall, watching the loaves vanish like smoke. The scent of baked rye and ash wafts toward you, mocking your empty hands. You shuffle forward, slowly. The woman in front of you is buying 6 loaves. 6? She winks at the baker. You've seen them whispering behind the smokehouse. She probably gets the good batch. You, however, get, well, whatever's left. The baker barely glances up when it's your turn. His hair is white with flour. His face is set in the permanent scowl of someone who hasn't slept since the solstice. He lifts a half loaf with burnt edges and raises an eyebrow. You nod. He grunts. Transaction complete. You bite into it a few minutes later. It tastes like charcoal and memories. Still, it's bread, and the warmth seeps into you like hope. You sit on a nearby cart rail and chew, staring into nothing for a moment, the kind of stare that only Mondays can produce. Around you, the village is alive with various levels of irritation. Children cry because their dolls got wet. Parents shout about chores not done. Dogs bark at puddles. It's the symphony of rural dysfunction. You hear a loud sneeze and turn to see the carpenter, face red and covered in sawdust. Curse this damp, he mutters, shaking his head. My knees sound like firewood. You nod. You feel that in your soul. Historians note that medieval tradespeople like bakers, blacksmiths, and carpenters were often respected, but not exactly envied, especially on days like this, when everything was wet, crowded, and loud. A loaf could mean life, but a bad batch could mean complaints, fines, or worse, whispers. You wander past the smithy next. It smells like metal and muscle. The forge hisses. Sparks leap like fireflies. The blacksmith is yelling at his apprentice, who is clearly not built for this life. His tunic is on backward. Again. You nod as you pass. He nods back without words. Just a moment of mutual, we hate this day acknowledgement. Then you see it. The cider stall. The old man who runs it always looks like he's been part of the village longer than the dirt. His beard has braids. His hands are permanently stained with apples. He gives you a small cup with a nod. It's warm. It's sweet. It burns slightly. You sigh, deeply. Long day, he says. You nod. He chuckles. They always are, then adds with a wink. But at least it's not Tuesday. You nearly choke on your cider. A small laugh escapes you, and for a moment, the gloom lifts. The bread doesn't taste so bad anymore. The rain seems to have lost interest. And even though the market smells like livestock and laundry, you feel strangely okay. You've made it through the worst of Monday. Almost. The sky begins to soften into that late afternoon murk. Still gray, still damp, but with just enough gold at the edges to trick you into thinking things might improve. You're halfway home, clutching your half-burnt bread and cider-warmed stomach, when you hear it. Raised voices. Not the angry kind. Not yet, but definitely dramatic. You follow the sound until you reach a small knot of villagers huddled near the well, whispering like hens on market day. She swore it was her sheep, says a woman with flour on her nose. But it had a ribbon, insists another. That's my ribbon. You crane your neck and spot the cause. A fluffy, very confused sheep standing in the center of the crowd, munching on someone's washing. It's wearing a tattered blue ribbon, in the sort of blank stare only sheep can truly master. You know this sheep. Everyone knows this sheep. It's wandered into 4 gardens, a chapel, and once, memorably, into the brewer's bath. You quietly back away before someone tries to drag you into the argument. Then you hear your name. It's your cousin, breathless, grinning, holding a bundle under his arm like a prize. Did you hear? He says. The blacksmith's wife saw the reeve sneaking out of the potter's barn, with 2 baskets, at dawn. You raise an eyebrow. Full? Overflowing, he whispers, eyes gleaming. You nod solemnly. This is officially the most exciting thing to happen since Brother Eustace tripped on his own robe last midsummer. Historians often dismiss gossip as mere background noise of village life, but in truth, it's the social glue, the thread that holds together muddy lanes and strained backs. In a world without newsprint, whispers are everything. You continue home as the stories bubble behind you. Someone claims the baker is hoarding yeast. Another swears the tailor's daughter has been wearing the same smock all week. Scandalous, terrifying. You round a corner and pass by the spinner's cottage. She's humming to herself, spinning wool with one foot propped up on a dog. The dog is asleep, or possibly retired. She nods at you without breaking rhythm. "You smell like cider," she says. You nod back. "It was warm." That helps. A group of children runs past, giggling, carrying sticks and shouting about dragons. One has a pot on his head. You smile. Somewhere, someone yells at them to quiet down. You step into your cottage just as the last light fades behind the chimney. The hearth crackles and someone's already laid out a bowl of thin stew and 3 very proud-looking onions. You don't ask questions, you sit. And as the village slowly shifts into evening, gossip cooling, animals settling, the sheep finally claimed by someone who may or may not actually own it, you realize the day has done something rare. It made you laugh. Twice. Which is more than you can usually say about Mondays. Just when your bones are finally convinced they've earned a rest, fate, or more precisely your neighbor with the missing front tooth, knocks on your crooked wooden door. "I hate to ask," she says, already halfway inside, "but could you come help with the fence? It's horizontal again." Of course it is. You pull your slightly less damp cloak around your shoulders and step outside. The sky has gone that dim pewter gray that says rain is over, for now. You trudge after her down the lane, passing the same puddles, the same goat chewing the same boot. The fence in question was never particularly stable. It leans like a tired old man after too much cider. 2 rails are missing entirely, and 1 post is currently being used by a rooster as a viewing platform. "I tried to tie it up with twine," she says, holding up something that may have once been string. Now it looks like overcooked noodles. You nod and get to work. Again, you drive the posts deeper into the damp soil using the flat of a hatchet and a well-placed rock. The rails are warped, stubborn, and at least one is hosting a family of very vocal beetles. You leave them alone. You've learned not to start wars you can't win. Halfway through, you pause to stretch your back, and that's when you hear it. "Hello!" A voice, high-pitched and far too cheerful for this time of day. You turn and see 2 figures on the path. Travelers, probably pilgrims, maybe traders, definitely wet. One is carrying a bag nearly as big as himself. The other is waving like your old friends. You're not. "We're looking for the tanner's workshop," he shouts. "He said 2nd path left, then past the goose pen, but we think we're lost." You glance toward the horizon. The tanner's shed is about a mile in the other direction, behind a hill. Smells like nightmares. You point. "That way." "Brilliant, thank you." They trudge off, singing something that might be a hymn or a tavern song. Hard to tell with pilgrims. Your neighbor sighs. They're going to spook the geese again. You return to the fence. 1 rail splits as you hammer it in place. You improvise a binding using a strip of old cloth. It holds, barely. Historians note that village life was deeply communal, with neighbors relying on each other for survival, assistance, and fence repair that no one ever really wanted to do. The flip side, of course, was that privacy was more of a concept than a reality. You couldn't sneeze without 3 people blessing you and 2 more asking what you ate. By the time the fence is standing, slightly crooked but stable, you're covered in dirt, sweat, and satisfaction. You shake your neighbor's hand. She gives you a slightly moldy apple. You call it even. Walking home, you pass by a cat sleeping on a barrel. It flicks its tail once and ignores you. Cats, like Mondays, are eternal. At your doorstep, you pause. The sky is deepening, and lamps are starting to flicker inside nearby homes. A door closes gently. Someone's humming. You smell soup, or at least boiled something. You open your own door, duck under the low beam, and step back into warmth. It's not perfect, but it's standing, just like that fence, Evening is settling over the village now, wrapping rooftops and livestock alike in a soft, smoky hush. You sit on a rickety stool just outside your door, arms resting on your knees, letting your muscles loosen in the cooling air. The sky above is a quilt of ash-gray clouds, stitched together with the last frayed threads of daylight. Inside the cottage, the fire murmurs quietly. A pot hangs over it, bubbling something thin and herbal. You're not sure what's in it. Frankly, you're afraid to ask. Your limbs ache. Your feet feel like they've been personally insulted by every rock in the region. You take a sip of lukewarm water, then lean back and just breathe. That's when your cousin appears again, out of breath, hair full of burrs. "You're not going to believe this," he pants. "The Reeves cow is in the mill pond." You stare. He nods. He's trying to bribe the cooper to pretend it's a different cow. You shake your head and laugh, a tired, wheezing sort of laugh. "Do we need to do something?" "Nah," he shrugs. "The cow's not in a hurry." The news spreads fast, of course. By the time you're halfway through a bowl of mystery stew, someone's already retelling the story in front of the smithy, adding details. The Reeve cried. The cow swam. The cooper demanded cheese. No one knows the truth. No one needs to. It's Monday. The facts are flexible. You wander over to the low bench beside the hearth, soup in hand. Your brother is dozing, mouth open. A dog is snoring beneath the table. Somewhere above, a beam creaks with the rhythm of settling heat. Historians still argue whether peasants had any time to themselves in the evenings, or if domestic labor simply shifted from public to private, mending, churning, patching, boiling, sweeping. But in this moment, your hands are idle, and that feels like rebellion. You stare into the fire. The flames dance lazily, casting warped shadows on the stone walls. You remember a story once told by the shepherd. That flame was the breath of old spirits, whispering advice to those patient enough to listen. Tonight, the fire says, "Sit still." So you do. Someone outside sings an old tune in a voice cracked by age and weather. You don't recognize the words, but the melody is familiar. It carries through the lane, weaving under door frames and across rooftops. You close your eyes for a moment. Your cousin bumps your knee. "You asleep?" "No," you murmur. He smiles. "Me neither." You sit together in silence, letting the warmth soak into your bones. Outside, the moon peeks through the clouds. Inside, the pot bubbles once more, announcing second servings with a hopeful plop. You decide not to get up. Not just yet. The day is almost over, and you've earned this stillness. The moon is climbing now, pale and slow above the thatched rooftops, casting a soft silver glaze over the village. You push the door closed gently behind you and step back into your one-room world of shadows and warm coals. The fire has burned low, just a few glowing embers nestled in ash, but it's enough to cast the faint outline of your sleeping brother, curled up beside the hearth with a hand tucked under his cheek like a child. The dog is gone, probably wandered into someone else's house for better scraps. Typical. You stretch your back. It cracks, loudly. No one stirs. You move toward your pallet, where straw pokes through the linen cover like little needles. It smells faintly of earth and feet. You fluff it anyway, by which we mean you punch it once and pretend it helped. You unlace your tunic clumsily and strip down to your undershirt. The air is cold against your skin, but the fire has left just enough heat to ease the chill. You settle in, pulling a rough wool blanket over your shoulders. It's scratchy, always is. But at this point, anything warm feels like luxury. Your mind flickers through the day, slow and foggy now. The bread, the cider, the fence, the dripping roof, the mysterious stew, the judgmental goose. All of it feels both recent and impossibly far away. Historians still wonder how peasants coped with the mental fatigue of endless labor, whether the rhythm brought peace or simply dulled the edge of exhaustion. But you know, you live it. The rhythm is the peace. A log in the fire shifts with a pop, sending a small cascade of sparks upward. You watch them float, tiny glowing stars dancing for no one. Your body relaxes. The aches haven't left, but they've quieted. Like even your joints know it's time to let go. The wind hums gently outside. The shutters rattle once, then still. Somewhere, an owl calls low and soft. Your cousin mumbles something in his sleep about bread and bees. You smile. You close your eyes. You don't think about Tuesday. Not yet. You wake before dawn, not on purpose. A rooster crows, late, again, and you open one eye to see your breath curling in the air. The embers have gone completely dark. You pull the blanket tighter, but your foot has found the one part of the straw mattress that's gone completely flat. It crunches like disappointment. Someone stirs beside you, probably your cousin. He lets out a long, theatrical sigh like waking up is an insult. You can't argue with that. You sit up slowly, joints popping like kindling. The sky outside is still dark, but the village is already murmuring. Fire pokers clanking, shutters being lifted, one sheep bleating with exaggerated urgency. You rub your face and feel the imprint of your blanket texture still clinging to your cheek. Charming. At the hearth, you coax the fire back to life. One spark, two, a third. It catches, barely. The glow begins to crawl across the room. You start the morning pot, thin porridge, thicker with every reuse of oats. You stir it like it might eventually become food. Outside, the day begins. It's Tuesday now, but somehow it still feels like Monday hasn't left. Your neighbor's voice rings out as she argues with her son about sweeping the path. A dog barks at a bird. A cart rattles past too fast for this hour, and someone yells, "Watch it!" with just enough bite to sound like a daily ritual. Historians still argue whether peasants divided time into emotional days like we do, whether they dreaded Mondays, whether they treasured Fridays, or if every day simply followed the sun, one long rhythm of a repetition. You suspect they knew. You throw your cloak over your shoulders and step into the chill. The sky is lightening now, one hesitant ray at a time. The village is waking, and so are you. The sun climbs just high enough to spill light onto the rooftops, which glisten faintly from last night's frost. You walk carefully, boots crunching over frozen puddles, your breath hanging in the air like smoke. It's your turn to fetch kindling today. Of course it is. You head toward the edge of the woods with a woven basket slung over one shoulder. The path is lined with frostbitten weeds and the occasional rabbit track. You hope the wolves have found better breakfast. As you walk, you start to notice the silence, one not found in the village. Out here, it's just wind and leaves and the occasional crack of ice as it melts underfoot. You gather fallen branches, snapping them into shorter pieces. A bird chirps somewhere above. You pause, not out of awe. Your back is just aching again. In the distance, smoke from the manor's chimneys rises in fat, content curls. Must be nice to wake up to warm rooms and soft bread. You return home with a full basket, fingers stiff, nose red. The fire welcomes you with a hiss as the wood takes. The porridge is ready, barely. You chew slowly, eyes half lidded. Then comes the knock. A traveling friar, cloak wet from morning mist, asks if you've heard the word. You nod. It was a bit mumbly yesterday, you reply. He smiles. You should sit closer. You smile back. I'll consider it. Historians still debate the influence of daily faith rituals in village life. How much was belief? How much was obligation? How much was habit? You think maybe it's all three. Or maybe it's just nice to have something predictable, even if it's a friar asking about your soul before breakfast. You close the door, add more wood, and let the day begin. The wind picks up again after midday. Not enough to be called a storm, but just enough to stir the ash from your chimney and remind you how porous your roof really is. You're on spinning duty this afternoon, which means sitting beside the window, twisting wool fibers into long, endless thread. It's meditative, until your fingers cramp. You hook the spindle on your knee and draw the fibers through slowly, rhythmically, trying not to think about the smell of the dye pot in the corner. Someone's been boiling onion skins again. For the color, they say. For the soul, you think not. The window gives you a clear view of the lane. Neighbors walking, trading, arguing over tools, passing gossip like bread. You spot the cooper's apprentice flirting again. Poorly. Spinning gives you time to think. Sometimes too much time. You remember your mother's hands doing the same motion years ago. Her fingers were faster, her words always slower. Twist with patience, she'd say. Rushing makes knots, knots make trouble. You twist with patience. Historians note that spinning was one of the most constant labors in the medieval home. Often done by women, often done by firelight, it was both livelihood and lore. Even fairy tales are full of spindles, some cursed, some golden, all spinning towards something. Outside, a dog chases a chicken across the lane. The chicken wins. You smile. The wool squeaks slightly against your palm. You spin until the light fades. Then you rise, slowly, and stretch your spine like you're 100 winters old. You open the door for air, and the breeze kisses your face with a promise. The day is almost over, and not once did your thread break. The moon is higher now, casting long blue shadows across the thatched roofs and uneven lanes. You step outside again, not because there's something to do, but because your bones are too restless to sleep just yet. The air has grown colder, sharper, but it's dry, and after a day of mud, wet wool, and smoke, that feels like a blessing. You pull your blanket tighter around your shoulders. It drags slightly on the ground, catching on the occasional stone, and you shuffle like an old monk creeping through a cloister. A soft fog is starting to settle in the lower parts of the lane, thin and swirling, glowing faintly under moonlight. It clings to your ankles like a ghost with cold fingers. You pass the cottage with the leaky roof, though to be fair, you're fairly certain every roof leaks around here, and nod to the figure seated out front. It's old Merrick, wrapped in what looks like 3 cloaks, poking half-heartedly at a piece of dry bread. He glances at you and lifts the bread in salute. "Can't sleep either?" he croaks. You shake your head. "Too many thoughts." He nods sagely, as if this is a medical condition. "That's why I eat garlic before bed, keeps dreams away. And the neighbors." You chuckle, thank him for the wisdom, and move along. The village is different at night. By day it's clamor and clatter, hooves, gossip, chores. At night it's quieter, humbler. The houses look smaller, the fences less stubborn. Even the chickens have stopped plotting. You head toward your favorite spot at the edge of the fields, just past the granary and the old split tree. It's not really a bench, it's a fallen log someone carved a shallow seat into. But it's yours. From here, you can see most of the village roofs, and just beyond them, the manor house glowing like a ghostly lantern. You sit. The log is holding beneath you, but you don't mind. You wrap your cloak tighter, pull your knees up, and let your eyes roam the sky. Tonight, it's clear. No clouds, no rain, just a sea of stars spilling over the horizon. You recognize a few constellations passed down in fireside stories. The pig, the sleeping hen, the farmer's belt. Real names? Probably not. But in this village, what people believe carries more weight than what's written. You hear a rustle and glance to the side. It's the miller's dog, trotting silently through the grass with some noble mission in mind. It pauses, stares at you like you're interrupting something, then trots on. In the stillness, your thoughts finally begin to uncoil. You think about the spinning wheel and the fibers sliding through your fingers. You think about the Reeves cow in the mill pond, the friar's sermon, your cousin's endless enthusiasm, the burnt bread, the cider, the blister, the missing chicken that never came home. All of it blends together into something oddly comforting. Historians still debate whether medieval people truly understood free time the way we do. Was a moment like this rare? Was it frowned upon? Was it stolen? Probably all 3. But you're not thinking about that. You're just being. The wind stirs the trees, soft and even, like a lullaby. You let your head rest back against the bark. You let your eyes close. You don't fall asleep, not quite, but you drift just a little. Enough for the night to whisper something you won't remember in the morning. Then, finally, you rise. Your knees crack. Loudly. You mutter a curse you're fairly sure the friar hasn't heard yet. Then you make your slow way back through the misty lane, past Merrick, who has now fallen asleep on his stool with his bread in his lap. You cover him with part of his cloak. He grunts softly, doesn't wake. The cottage is waiting for you. Warm, quiet, full of soft snoring and one suspicious rustle that might be the chicken after all. You ease the door shut behind you and let the dark wrap around you like a promise. Inside the cottage, the fire has gone to embers, soft orange dots in a bed of gray ash. You move slowly, carefully, not to wake the others. You know this room by memory now. Every creaky board, every spot where the draft slips through, every snag on the wall that can catch a sleeve. You warm your hands over what little heat remains, rubbing your palms together with a slow rhythm. You listen. The wind has settled. The world outside is muffled, like someone wrapped the whole village in wool. Your cousin is muttering again in his sleep, something about cheese and injustice. The dog has returned, curled tightly near the hearth, tail twitching with dreams. Someone has left a bowl of something on the corner table. You sniff it. It might have been stew 2 days ago. You drink a little water. It's cold, tastes faintly of ash, but it settles your throat. You start your slow nightly routine, checking the shutter latch, covering the coals, nudging the straw pallet back into a vaguely human shape. You undo the twine in your boots. Your fingers fumble. They're still stiff from the cold, from the spinning, from everything. You lay down, blanket over your shoulders, curled on your side to avoid the lump in the mattress. You breathe. 1, 2, stillness. You stare up at the low ceiling beams. They're covered in soot and memories. One of them has a crack shaped like a crow. You've named it Gerald. You wish him a good night. Your feet are sore. Your back is sore. Your eyelids are sore. But the ache is a quiet one now, no longer shouting. You shift once, settle again. Someone coughs, then stillness again. You let your breath slow. You think of the stars over the village, still gleaming. You think of the friar's song. You think of the goat you never found. You think of how tomorrow will come, muddy boots and all. Historians have noted that sleep came differently in medieval life, often in 2 segments, with a first sleep and a waking period in between. They say people would rise, tend the fire, pray, even talk, then fall back into second sleep. You wonder if you're between sleeps now. You hope the second one comes soon. Your body feels heavy. Your thoughts float. You let go. The blanket rises and falls with each breath, slower, deeper. Outside, the village breathes with you. Chimneys still curl faint smoke. Somewhere, a door creaks, then nothing. And finally, the dark folds in around you like a story ending. This day, this long, ridiculous, rain-soaked, goose-filled Monday is truly done. You've survived. You're safe. You sleep. So here you are, nestled beneath a rough blanket on a bed of straw, listening to the final whispers of the fire and the low hush of the wind. The village has gone still now. No shouting, no splashing, no more errands, no more mud, no more chores waiting in the wings, just the breath of night moving softly through the room. The floor creaks quietly as it settles into silence. Someone shifts under their blanket nearby. The coals sigh, fading slowly into deep orange. And the world outside, it keeps turning, but gently now, like a spinning wheel left to slow itself. You've done enough for one day, truly. You've weathered the Monday market, outmaneuvered livestock, outlasted rain, gossip, cracked fences, and overcooked bread. You've been judged by monks, stared down by chickens, and almost taken out by your own wooden shoes. But still, you are here, resting, breathing. This moment belongs to you. No lords, no lists, no muddy paths or dripping roofs, just the soft dark, the gentle chill, in the promise of dreams. So let your breath slow, let your thoughts fade, let the weight of the day melt into the warmth beneath your blanket. You're safe, you're home, you're still, and for now, that's enough.